Hello, guys. Hello, Archa Duality. How you guys doing today? How are y'all? We're live a little bit earlier, but it's Friday, so, you know, that's how it be. I'm excited. And, wait for it. Oh my god! Who's that in the corner? Who is that in the corner? Oh my god. I'm a little guy. Oh my god, I'm a little guy. And I do a little bouncing. I got a couple different expressions that I'm not gonna show until it's like relevant, but we're here and we're gonna read. So I got it working, which is super fun. Oh, thank you, Whiteout Woof, yeah, for the follow. Welcome to Hideout. So yeah, we're gonna read, and I'm gonna, it's gonna be, I was testing it earlier, like I was reading to myself and then trying to like make sure I could do it, of like reading while like operating, because I have it on like my number pad, like my keypad, to for the shortcuts. So it's a bit of a, because I use my arrow keys to go up and down, so it's like right there, but you might have to bear with me as I kind of get used to it, because I want to try to, you know, keep it in the tone of the of the thick of when it's relevant, right? So we'll be trying it out. I'll see how it kind of feels. Most people are going to be only listening anyways, you know, most people don't have the stream open and they kind of use this as a podcast, but it kind of just like helps me almost like stay more engaged, because I kind of have more to like multitask and do while I'm reading, which is maybe a bad thing because I probably should just be fully focused on reading, but it helps me get into the mood. So I don't know, I was playing with it earlier and it was pretty fun, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we're gonna wait a couple more minutes because it just hit 6 and I told people 6, so I'm gonna wait like till like 6:05 and then we'll get started. I also uploaded the last 2 VODs. They're now on the YouTube channel. So those are all updated now. I still have to upload the animation VODs of like just the animation streams we were doing, which I'm eventually gonna do. They're like on my YouTube channel. I just need to like make thumbnails for them, and I don't technically have to make thumbnails for them, but I need to make a base thumbnail for like all the animation stuff and then go from there. Ugh. So, but I do have fun with it. I like putting a lot of effort into things that most people won't ever see. It makes me feel good, knowing everything kind of looks unified and pretty. But we're doing chapter 13 today. It's wild. We are almost halfway through this fic. Can you believe that? By the end of this stream, we will probably be more than halfway through the fic. Which, considering how long it took us to get to halfway through Alternate Universe, obviously this is shorter, but it's funny to think about it in that perspective. And I'm excited for this chapter, but I'm excited for the whole fic. So. Also, hello, Sino and Crenshaw. I saw you guys as well in chat. Hope you guys are both doing well. So, oh, let me turn off my fan. It's getting kind of chilly. I also, oh my god, so I did D&D yesterday, which is why obviously I wasn't here. I fucking wrecked my voice. Holy shit. I woke up, oh, my throat was so sore. I decided to make this NPC out of nowhere because I was improvising, and I made this NPC. She was this half-orc. Hi Willow. She was this half-orc, and I named her Adira. Let me see if I can do the voice again. She talked, she talked a little bit like this. And she was part of the Silverhand mercenaries. And she, was preparing, she got the party to head to the Beast's Den to participate in a bit of a gladiator-style combat fight, a pit fight against various beasts. I did that for half of the session, for half of like the 3-4 hour session. So, and I kind of just made it up on the spot, and then I was dedicated. Thank God they were like doing combat most of the time, so I wasn't always narrating her, but she was there the whole time. So I like woke up and I felt it during the session. I was like, this is gonna fucking murder my throat. Oh my god. And I was like drinking water through the whole thing. One of our players brought brownies, and like food and stuff like that. So I was like snacking and I was eating and I was drinking, but by the end I was like, oh my god. That was a bad idea. So if I'm a little bit off today, or we might not do as much, I might only go for like an hour and 30. We might only do maybe like 2 chapters, depending on how long. I just didn't talk most of the day today because I was like, I need to rest my voice. But yeah. But see, I was just like, I gotta get into the if I'm like, okay, I'm describing like a half-orc, an older like half-orc warrior lady, and then it's like that's the voice that comes to my head, and I'm like, well, I'm dedicated now, like like I gotta commit, you know, I gotta commit to the bit. So that's how it was. But it was still fun. I had a blast. Everybody in the session had a blast, and everybody's excited for next week, which is great. And we did stuff that I can pretty much 80% of it was improv. I had a whole other thing planned, and they did the one thing that I didn't plan. But my most experienced player, Amanda, because I was texting her at the end, and she was like, that was so good. Like, that was an awesome session. You did great. And I was like, yeah, you want to believe it? That was like all improv. And she was like, really? I thought that you had that all planned. And I was like, yes, win, fucking win. Oh, that's the best feeling as a DM when you can bullshit and make it seem like you knew exactly what you were doing. So, but that means I don't have to write as many notes for next session because I have everything prepped. Or I have some of the actual stuff. I still need to do a little bit more. They're going to be doing a heist mission, and the whole point in like a good D&D heist mission, you just make the floor plan, you make the security, and then they figure out how the fuck to do it. I still haven't drawn up the floor plan. I need to. I'm just been kind of lazy, but I'll do that eventually. So, anyways, we're gonna just hop right into Fall of Rome. It's Fall of Rome time, so I'm gonna turn off my music as usual. And I'm going to turn off desktop audio so you guys do not hear my email ping, as usual. And we're just gonna get started. Let me draw my silly. So, we gotta make sure you send me those doodles afterward, because I don't want to see them. I don't want to see your sillies. All right, mainly lurking. No worries. So if I have to take a couple more breaks to drink some water mid-chapter, you guys will know why. I don't know if you can tell. It feels like my voice is more raspy, but I can't tell. It was bad this morning, so I think it's gotten evened out a bit today, over the course of the day. But yeah. So we're gonna get started. Hello, foolish fan. Welcome to the stream. Yeah. So this is chapter 13 of the Fall of Rome, and here we go. It's funny how time worked. Sometimes it rushed forward or dragged on in irregular sprints and lulls that felt like waves crashing on the beach, each one erasing more and more of the sand beneath Dave's feet until he was teetering on an edge, fighting to keep his balance, struggling to stay afloat, unsure of which way to fall. Those 2 weeks leading up to the full moon were straight from hell in the best possible way, as somehow Dave and Carcat grew closer together in afternoons spent at the board office, heads closer together, as Dave carefully explained advanced algebra to Carcat, and the latter explained how the hell to write a decent English paper. They talked about movies and books and stars, hopes and dreams and fears, but never about themselves. Dave's past was a closed book, bound tightly in chains, and neither of them picked at those loose pages that sometimes fluttered out whenever Dave heard an unexpected loud clash of noise or stared too long at the news. For the first time since Dave had escaped the apartment, Bro seemed like a distant problem. Like, sure, Bro was an issue looming overhead like a thundercloud, but now Dave lived in the calm before the storm, and as deceptive as that was, he'd found peace here. And then those 2 weeks were up. Every night Dave stared out the kitchen window to watch the moon rise, and every night the moon waxed larger until its almost full face shone down on him in silver. It was then, on that final night, that dread began to set in. Initially, Agent Slick had put up a fight about the whole affair, bitching and moaning about safety protocols and recklessness, and Dave, this is the opposite of a good decision. But at the end of it, Dave guessed it didn't matter much what house he was locked in, as long as he couldn't get out, and Slick had an eye on him at all times. The funny thing about that was Dave never imagined that Slick would eventually break, but somehow the gruff older agent must have guessed how important this was to Dave. That or Slick didn't want to deal with the fallout when Dave predictably disobeyed him to see Karkat. Karkat missed school that day that Dave climbed on a different bus that would take him to Karkat's house. It was overcast overhead in a way that didn't happen in the south, the sky somehow damp above him. His backpack was stuffed with a few extra changes of clothes, a toothbrush, and his unfinished schoolwork that, despite what he told Slick, he wasn't planning on finishing. In the murky, wet daylight, Karkat's house always looked grander from the outside, identical to the other rows of houses that lined the cul-de-sac. It looked like a picture cut out of a magazine showcasing blue-collar America, and Dave felt like a stain on the paper as he clomped down the bus steps and onto the pavement of Karkat's driveway. Mr. Vantis's boxy modified car was still in the driveway, and the lights were on the inside, like he must have been out to load up the luggage with Dave. Mr. Vantis's boxy modified car was still in the driveway, and the lights were on inside, like he must have just been out to load it up with the luggage Dave could see clustered in the back seat. Dave made his way up to the front door with his heart in his throat, staring down at the scuffed shoes that were all he had left of his old life. He'd have to replace them soon. They were far too small for him now, and the sole was starting to come off at the toe and heel. The thought made him uneasy. He rang the doorbell, expecting Mr. Vantis to answer. Instead, he got a nervous-looking Karkat. Dave said nothing as he put his hands in his pockets. Hey, Karkat answered back shyly as Dave studied him. His friend was dressed casually in a graphic tee and gray sweats. He almost looked normal, if it wasn't for the shadow in his red eyes. You're here. I'm here. Dave shrugged off his backpack and held it in his hands. There's still time to change your mind, he said gently, reading Karkat's strained expression. Karkat shook his head. No, he said. I want you to be here. Dave swallowed past the lump in his throat as Karkat hurriedly went on, letting him in. Anything interesting happen at school today? Karkat asked, filling the silence before a loud thump came from the side room as Mr. Vantis slammed the last briefcase shut with a snap before appearing in the entryway. Hello, Dave. The man greeted him warmly in a way that didn't erase the stress lines carved around his eyes. Sup, he said back, still holding onto his backpack. Mr. Vantis let out his breath. Today's the big day, he began, and Karkat instantly groaned. Dad, Karkat complained. Mr. Vantis held up a hand. Wait, he said seriously. I had this whole speech planned out. No, Karkat protested loudly. No speech. We'll be fine. I wrote a list, Karkat's dad said triumphantly, reaching into the breast pocket to draw out and unfold a piece of paper. He cleared his throat, smoothing out the paper. No list, Karkat demanded, slightly mortified. His eyes were wide. No! Mr. Vantis looked hurt, his mouth downturned, and Karkat quickly amended himself. We'll be fine, Karkat said. I've got this. We've got this. Now go to your meeting and have fun in California. Okay. Mr. Vantis relented at last, his gaze fond. But call me as soon as you can. And remember, the police have us on speed dial. So does the hospital. The last part was directed at Dave. Don't be afraid to call for help. Fine, Karkat promised, all but attempting to shove his dad out the door. We know, we've got this. Now go before you miss your plane. Mr. Vantis let out a huff, squaring his shoulders. Okay, he said, then sighed. I can't believe I'm doing this, leaving you. It's crazy. And suddenly, Karkat didn't look so sure of himself anymore. I won't be alone. It's okay, Karkat said, it like he was trying to convince himself of it, and Dave felt like a watcher intruding on this private family conversation. He was still intrigued with watching them, soaking in how a healthy small family interacted. He stayed silent. All right, Mr. Vantis picked up the suitcase and checked his watch. I've got to go. You two kids stay safe. We will, Karkat promised again, but Dave could easily hear the tremor in his voice. Now, go. Everything will be okay. It's just another full moon. Mr. Vantis held his open arms out, and his son obediently embraced him, like it was this easy to see where Like this, it was easy to see where Karkat got his fondness and skill with hugs from. "I'll be back before you know it," Mr. Vantis promised, hefting up his final suitcase under his arm. He gave one last worried look to his son, then exited the house. The gentle click of the door closing behind him echoed, and they were alone. Karkat looked at Dave like he didn't quite know what to say. Dave put his hands in his pockets. "There's plenty of food in the fridge," Karkat blurted out, "and you can always, order out if you'd like. We have Netflix too if you get bored." "I don't get bored," Dave answered back automatically. Long afternoons spent doing nothing in his apartment had taught him how to entertain himself. "Are you sure?" Karkat fretted. It'll be long time before I can get back to you once it starts." "Starts? The full moon." Dave blinked, a hint of his first nerves moving through him. "How long do you have?" Karkat shrugged. "It'll happen pretty quickly once the sun starts to go down." That was 3 hours away. So little time. "Why'd you miss school today, then?" Karkat explained. I always skip the day of to rest and prepare myself." He sounded fairly calm for someone who was about to go through hell, but Dave knew this wouldn't be for the first time. "Okay," Dave said, setting his backpack down by the couch as they entered the living room. "So, what's the rundown? What do I have to do?" Karkat looked nervous, then sighed, settling down on the sofa. "I suppose it's time to give you the full explanation," he admitted. Dave sat down at the other end of the couch, a careful distance between them. The sofa was so plush that it tried its best to eat him for a few seconds before he got situated. "God damn," he said, still sinking into the cushions. "Karkat, help, your couch is trying to do me in." Karkat grinned, the joke doing exactly what Dave had intended. "Yeah, it does that." "Damn," Dave said. "I'll be sleeping well tonight. This is by far the best couch I've ever sat on." Karkat made a face at that. "We have a guest room for you," he mentioned. "You won't be forced to stay on the couch." Dave wasn't sure how he felt about that. Guest rooms weren't even supposed to be real things that people had. "We're drifting off track," he said to change the subject. "What's going to happen to you tonight?" Karkat shrugged. "I'll turn," he said. "Your job will be easy compared to that." "What do I have to do?" "Lock me in," Karkat answered. "Then let me out again when it's over." He unrumpled a slip of paper with a frown. "Dad slipped me this when he hugged me. Fucking bastard." He curiously read the first few lines and then grimaced. "Yeah," he said. "It's a good thing you didn't see this." "Why?" Dave said, leaning closer. "He writes like a lunatic. Number one," Karkat complained, "and it's so goddamn impersonal and scientific. It makes it sound like a receipt almost. Do this for the better result. It's sickening." "Forget the list then," Dave told him. "Tell me in your words." It was the perfect opportunity for Dave to get a glimpse at what went on in his friend's head, but instead of answering, Karkat scowled. "No," he sighed. "He explains it far better than I ever could. I'd end up ranting for 3 hours without actually saying anything useful. So, here." He thrust the list at Dave. "Read it." Dave scanned the list, committing it to memory. It was a very complete and detailed list, outlining each step. "That's it," he said, turning the paper over to scan the blank back. "That's more problematic than I'd thought." Now the nerves were back full swing, twisting like snakes in his belly. "I know," Karkat said. "Being a werewolf fucking sucks. It's shitty, and I'm sorry." "Karkat, it's okay," Dave said, setting the list to the side. The list didn't matter. Karkat did. "Don't worry about anything. I've got this." "Are you sure?" Karkat asked, his red gaze piercing. "I'm sure," Dave swore. "Okay," Karkat said, and he didn't say anything else, so they ended up sprawled out on the couch together, eating chips and watching dumb videos on Karkat's phone as outside the overcast sky continued to darken from white to gray. Dave tried not to pay attention to the time, but in his head, the seconds were winding down. Eventually, Karkat paused the video they were watching to put his hand to his chest, feeling for his heartbeat. Dave could see sweat beating into existence at his temples. "Hey," Dave said softly. "I'm fine," Karkat said unthinkingly. Then he frowned, and Dave could feel the tremor that rocked through him. "Maybe not. I should go soon." "The moon's rising," Dave guessed. "Not yet, it's not," Karkat sighed. "But I should probably go." "Okay," Dave nodded, his neck stiff. He didn't know what else to say. What was there to say in a situation like this? Come on, Karkat said, rising to his feet. I'll show you what to do. He made a grab for the remote on the side table and snatched it up, flicking on the TV and scrolling through the settings. Hit home to see into the basement. It's a live stream. The cops have it too, so don't do anything fucking stupid. He paused, and then his voice got softer. But don't look until at least 8 o'clock, alright? I don't want you to see me until after it's done. Okay, Dave agreed, no part in him interest in disobeying that particular request. He didn't fancy catching Karkat in any kind of torment like that. It's this way. Karkat switched the TV back to idle, and Dave jumped up to follow him into the kitchen and down a short hallway that Dave had never glanced at twice before. Karkat opened a shelved pantry to reveal a hidden blue steel door with an old-fashioned sliding bar lock on it that, with ease, he heaved open. The door groaned with its weight as he opened it, the metal at least 3 inches thick. Inside, there was a narrow stairway downward, brightly lit and carpeted. The door's a neat trick, Dave offered to fill the silence as they headed down into the basement. It's just an extra precaution on top of my 500 other precautions, Karkat told him, and Dave believed it. With as much care that his friend had put into the safeguard of the school, Dave could only imagine what all must be protecting his house. The basement was almost completely unrecognizable. There were no windows. There was only the one door at the bottom of the stairs that ended in a small 10 by 10 room that had been sealed off from the rest of the basement by iron bars and acrylic. The basement itself was nothing more than a large cage. The walls were gray concrete, and the floor was bare. There was a bed piled high with pillows and blankets shoved into the back corner next to a bare, standalone toilet and a stainless steel sink. The door was reinforced bulletproof glass. The small alcove was barred in what looked like steel, but had been double wrapped with acrylic and glass so slick and smooth that Dave couldn't help but reach out and run his fingers over the cool material. This time, the lock was legit, something 3-stage and electronic. Karkat keyed in the correct codes and then expertly unlocked the 5 rows of manual locks that ranged from bars to chains. It's electromagnetically sealed, Karkat told him, as the door cracked open with a hiss, and pneumatically locked as well in case the power goes out and the generator is sabotaged. It has a separate ventilation system, self-contained, plus we're 2 stories underground. The bars contain silver thread. The glass is bulletproof, and the acrylic unbreakable. Even if I somehow get out of here, the house above is just as well protected. The general public is safe. Dave let out a whistle. Karkat seemed proud of how secure he'd made this place, determined to make other people safe from him and prevent a repeat of recent history's worst wolf attacks. Then Dave caught sight of the hole in the wall right before the concrete cut its edges into clean, straight acrylic. It was a thin pane of glass, a break-in-case-of type deal. Behind the glass was a black handgun, silver bullets arranged around it alongside spare magazines. Dave felt sick. He could feel his face pale. Karkat grimaced, looked at the gun with distaste. Ignore that, he advised. It's not even loaded. Another precaution, Dave forced himself to ask. Just in case, Karkat admitted, ashamed. His eyes were hard and his jaw was set. There's no weapons in this house aside from that one. He looked down. The entry codes are written down on the list I gave you. I won't forget, Dave promised. His heart was pounding as Karkat stepped into the basement with his shoulders rigid. So, Karkat shrugged helplessly. I guess I'll see you later? Dave nodded, solemn. I'll be here. Karkat nodded back, and then he swung the door shut between them. There was no goodbye. Dave heard another hiss as the mechanics of it engaged once more, and then with Karkat's watchful eyes on him, Dave dutifully set to relocking each of the manual locks that he knew were probably that word, because it wasn't like wolves had thumbs in the first place. But if these extra locks are what made Karkat feel safe, then by all hell was Dave locking them. He had to fight the urge to look back the entire way back up that staircase. The door at the top was even heavier than it looked, but Dave heaved it open and then closed it behind him with a click, locking Karkat in as he slid the heavy iron bolt into place. He slid the movable cupboard back into place to disguise the door, and then he was alone. Dave ghosted through the empty house, rechecking to make sure that the front and back doors were also securely locked. Faithful to his promise, he didn't touch the TV except to boot it up to YouTube. He spent a few hours catching back up with his favorite artists and channels, every second the loneliness settling deeper into his bones before his stomach growled. Dave raided the Vantis fridge, but found nothing microwavable. There weren't even instant meals in the freezer, only healthy single ingredients. Suddenly all those salads Dave had seen Karkat eat at lunch made sense, and he ended up shredding half a head of lettuce in a bowl, tossing a handful of cheese on top, slathering the whole thing in ranch, and calling it a night. He retreated back to the couch with his sad bowl of lettuce. He couldn't stop his mind from wandering to Karkat and the meal he was skipping. Dave picked up the list Mr. Vantis had written him, setting his bowl to the side as music blasted from the TV. He hadn't been alone like this since he'd lived with Bro, and just enough time had passed for the sensation to be unfamiliar. He reread the list, taking in the cramped, squiggly handwriting that outlined a series of steps to follow. Number 1. Lock all doors, engage all security systems, and do whatever Karkat asks you to do. Lock every lock, and make sure all outer doors are locked as well. Let no one in, and don't answer the door for anyone. Remember, the cops are only a phone call away. Number 2. Wait. This can be the hardest part. There's plenty of food in the fridge for you and Netflix on the TV. The computer in my office is also for use, but please refrain from purchasing adult films. I will know if you ignore this, and I will contact your handler. Dave nearly snorted, like he would actually ever get caught. He knew just enough about hacking to get away with whatever he wanted to. Plus, Mr. Vantis probably had his credit card information auto-saved on his computer. Dave shook his head to banish the thought. He was a guest here. He wouldn't take advantage of Mr. Vantis' trust like that. Number 3. It will take approximately 60 hours for Karkat to return to human form. During this time, he will not eat, sleep, or drink, and when he turns back, he will be incredibly exhausted. Your job is to try and get a good meal in him before he passes out for a few more hours, but don't expect him to eat much because he tends to be nauseous after the moon begins to wane. Number 4. Karkat has his cell phone on him. He will call or text you when he is ready to be released. Do not go into the basement until he summons you. Number 5. If you need help, ask me or the police are only a phone call away, and we are all skilled and experienced at dealing with this. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Number 6. Don't panic, breathe, and remember that Karkat has done this many times before. Everything will be okay. Dave set the list slowly to the side, his thoughts torn. 60 hours was a long time to wait, especially when every passing second dragged at his consciousness like a rusty nail under his skin. Dave couldn't help but check the clock on the wall, then at the time stamp displayed at the bottom of the TV screen. It was after 8, but Dave had zero desire to spy on Karkat. But he did need to at last check that his friend was alive and still breathing. He picked up the TV remote and flipped it over to the channel that Karkat had showed him earlier. The basement immediately came into view. Dave's hand was trembling as he kept his finger on the off button, and as soon as his mind registered movement, just long enough for his brain to categorize the shape he saw as wolf, he slammed his finger down and the TV shut off with a click. He'd look later. For now, Dave let his anxiety take a chill as he confirmed that Karkat was doing okay as to be expected, which meant 4 legs and a tail. Honestly, he was still wrapping his mind around that aspect. Science had never managed to explain this part of the curse. Lycanthropy was a fickle disease, for sure. Dave finished his piss-poor excuse for a dinner and took his time with washing out the bowl he'd used, the water running hot as he ran his hands under it. Then he went back to the couch with the lights dimmed. He texted Slick to let his handler know he had everything under control, and then he went back to browsing YouTube. He'd fallen asleep by the time he'd stumbled down the YouTube rabbit hole and into gritty edited AMPVs of his favorite shows set to emo music. Dave didn't dream. It was more of a nap than actual deep sleep, and he woke just after 2 a.m. The TV had paused itself long enough on an ad for basketball or some other sports he didn't really care about, and the dim, fuzzy lighting illuminated the living room in strange ways. Dave blinked behind his shades, squinting into the darkened room before sliding them off and tucking them into the neck of his shirt. His feet were quiet across the floor as he made his way over to the hidden door in the kitchen and hauled the steel door behind the cupboard open. He immediately had to put his shades back on at the glare from the overhead light that brightened the staircase. He started resolutely downward. He had to see for himself just this once. Dave had been expecting to see a wolf in the basement, and there was, in fact, an animal that looked like a wolf, but just wrong enough to set all of his hindbrain instincts to screaming. He'd seen pictures of real wolves before they'd been hunted to extinction, and he tried to reconcile that image with the wolf before him, but kept coming back to the same conclusion. This was a wolf, but somehow intrinsically wrong. He looked at Karkat, really looked at him. The wolf wasn't hard to see under the bright lights, and the wolf certainly wasn't hiding. As soon as Dave had appeared at the top of the stairs, the werewolf had bolted for the door, proving to Dave why the acrylic and glass was there. It was to stop the wolf from getting his teeth around the bars. Dave paused on the final step, watching the wolf try to bite its way to freedom to kill him. He saw teeth flashing behind the slavering jaws that snapped at him, heard the ferocious growls and snarls of a beast set for blood, pacing along the doorway on restless feet, with hackles raised. The wolf was charcoal gray, like it had been woven from shadows, smoke, and ashen bone. Only the eyes were the same, a deep, burning red that nearly glowed. The difference was that these eyes held no awareness in them, no mind behind the face, only an endless bloodlust. "Damn," Dave said, and the wolf pricked up its ears at the sound of his voice. "Karkat, you're one fugly dude." The wolf snarled at him again, and went back to pacing the floor and drooling at him in a relentless back-and-forth hunter's gait. It was not a pretty picture. Knowing that right now Karkat was trapped as this thing was horrible. He couldn't unsee it. The image was branded across the backs of his eyes with a hot iron. Dave turned his back on the wolf, a surprisingly difficult task, and walked upstairs and locked the door behind him, leaving Karkat trapped as that monster down in a cold, sterile basement far underground. There was nothing he could do. Everything in him was unquiet, and he didn't go back to sleep for a long time. At about 24 hours in, Dave thought he'd go crazy. His hours were spent doing nothing but stressing over the fact that Karkat the wolf was locked in the basement. Somehow, this fact hadn't seemed like that big of a deal until after Dave had seen the werewolf with his own eyes. That realization bothered Dave incessantly until he figured out why. Standing at the foot of those stairs, watching the wolf pace back and forth before him, Dave had felt like prey. He hadn't felt like that since he'd lived at his own apartment. He thought he'd buried that feeling, but somehow, seeing the wolf in the flesh and realizing that the only barrier between them was thin, invisible glass spaced with bars wide enough he could easily have fit his arm through, had brought the feeling back in full force. Now, Dave was just as trapped in the house as Karkat was. Common sense told him he could easily bow out and call the cops to come over and finish this, but loyalty to his friend kept Dave in place on the sofa. Apparently, he had more pride than he thought, because the idea of giving up made a sour taste coat his mouth. Once an hour, he checked on Karkat using the TV live stream. Aside from that, he left the wolf alone. He didn't go downstairs again. He didn't want to see Karkat in such a state. He much preferred his friend without the fur. Karkat wandered through the huge house. Dave wandered through the huge house a little, trying not to actively snoop around. He stopped to study the row of lovingly framed photos on the wall by the entrance. He stared closer when he realized that before 7th grade, Karkat's eyes showed as a deep, stormy gray that matched his dad's eyes. Unsettled, Dave noticed more differences than that. Most of the pictures before featured other people, a boy with blue eyes and buck teeth, a girl with wild dark hair and a wide, slightly crooked smile. A girl wearing an eye patch and a scowl stood side by side with Karkat, both of them flipping off the camera. A life shown in snapshots of people Dave didn't know and never heard Karkat talk about. Dave closed his eyes. 33 students. Were they the ones shown in these photos? Dave's sins might have been awful, but at least he hadn't known any of Bro's victims personally. Dave stared at the picture, thankful for his small mercy and heartbroken for Karkat all over again. 48 hours in, and things still sucked. Dave had eaten all the lettuce by this point and resorted to munching the apples he found in the fridge. There was some kind of meat in the freezer, but the stove intimidated him, so he left it alone. He probably couldn't even figure out how to turn that fancy thing on, much less cook something with it. He was saved by a box of stale Cheerios he found in the back of the cabinet. Sweet, sweet salvation. He flipped over to Carcat Live TV just to do an hourly check on the wolf and saw nothing amiss, just the same rabid pacing and bar biting he'd seen already. He turned the TV off again. He was starting to get worried, watching Carcat move nonstop, exerting himself like a thing possessed for this long in a row without ceasing. Dave could scarcely imagine a living thing going through this and surviving. A human could only go so long without water or sleep, and Carcat was pushing right against the end of the line. The burnout from this wouldn't be good, Dave knew. His own sleep cycle was fucked from stress as he did nothing but nap for a few hours before his own stress would wake him. It was official. This sucked. Nearly at the 60-hour mark, Dave started to get desperate. Carcat was due to turn back any minute now, so Dave stopped checking on him via livestream. With nothing to do besides text increasingly weird and niche memes to Slick just to blow up his phone, Dave resorted to the unthinkable. He did his homework. All of it. Even the parts that wouldn't be due for days. Madness. Then, Dave did the inexcusable. He texted Carcat. So, you're a wolf now, and obviously can't text me back. Cool. I'm just fucking bored out of my mind up here, and also worried sick about you. Is that normal? Like, I get that you have this disease or curse or whatnot, and maybe I'm being a dick by saying this, but I really wish you didn't have to go through this every month. I know it sucks beyond any realm of conceivable suckage, and it triple sucks because none of this was ever your fault, yet you're still paying the price for it, and that's just not fair. But the world isn't fair, and I know that more than anyone, but I hate that this has happened to you, of all people, because you are one of the kindest, most good-hearted people I've ever met, and no one deserves this less than you do, and I get that I'm rambling now, but bear with me. You were right. I did hold you and the wolf separate in my mind, and now I'm going through the complicated process of recognizing the mistakes of my own inner self. I just wish you were here. Yo, is it crazy or what that I miss you when you're in the same house as me? Anyway, I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but it'll only work if you're there to discuss it with me. Sort myself out, about all this wolfy shit that I've been low-key ignoring until reality bitch slapped me in the face like it did just now. Like every month? Every fucking month? That's fucking insane. God. I'm still here fucking rambling like another jackass texting into the void when I know you're not going to text me back anytime soon. It's like 7 at night and I can see the moon out the window. I used to think the moon was beautiful, but now I'm not so sure. At least I can be glad that the moon is waxing away now, shrinking back down to something harmless, something that can't hurt you. There's this saying, on the internet maybe, about someone who pulled down the stars for their friend. Seeing you like this makes me want to pull down the moon for you and hide it away, and oh god, am I saying way too much? Oh my god, why can't I shut the fuck up? Fuck, god. Just do me a favor and forget I just sent that, okay? I'm gonna shut up now. Dave set his phone down before he could write anything else super incriminating embarrassing. His face felt red. God. He checked the clock again, feeling his anxiety pick up without a phone to distract him. It was right at the 60-hour mark. Was Carcat turning back right now? Had too much time passed? Should Dave check on him again? What if something had happened? Dave leaned back on the sofa, torn as he fiddled with the remote to the TV. He kept his eyes on the clock, watching the seconds tick down as he argued with himself. In the end, he put the remote to the side. If anything had gone wrong, the police would know and they'd send somebody to help. Dave wouldn't violate Carcat's trust just because his gut felt like it was full of red-hot snakes. Then, his phone vibrated in his pocket, and Dave nearly dislocated a finger in the haste of fishing it out as fast as possible. He opened the text and scanned the words with a quick eye. Done. Help. Dave was already off the couch and across the living room before he'd finished reading the text. His heart was pounding as he heaved the hidden door open, slid back the bar, and all but ran down the stairs. He nearly tripped once or twice, but his superior sense of balance saved him from falling and breaking his face. At the bottom, the first thing he saw was the complete lack of a wolf pacing the floor, which a part of Dave still expected to see. He was still confused about how the finer mechanisms of how the hell lycanthropy worked, but turning into a wolf was fucking crazy. Instead, he spotted Carcat, back in his human form, lying huddled up beside the spare bed that he'd somehow managed to drag himself over to. He hadn't made it onto the bed, but had pulled off the blankets to cover himself with. Only his bare legs were visible from under the blankets. Dave forced his fingers to be still as he worked at opening the manual locks. Then he keyed in the proper code, and the electric lock hissed open as the system was disarmed. The first thing Dave noticed was the blast of cold air that hit him in the face, heavy with the fetid scent of something heavy and woodsy. "Carcat," Dave called out tentatively as he approached the bed. "You okay?" The lump that was Carcat shifted, revealing a tired face. For a second he looked confused, like he couldn't quite place who he was seeing, then slowly said, "Dave?" "Yeah," Dave said, carefully kneeling beside him. "I'm here." Carcat nodded on a stiff neck. He was covered in sweat and still rocking with leftover tremors of the change. "You're here," he said in disbelief. "I made you a promise," Dave told him, meaning it. "Now, let me help you. Can you walk?" From the state of Carcat's face, walking seemed doubtful. "Not yet," Carcat cautioned. "Give me a few more minutes to regain control of everything." He shook his head like he was trying to clear a swarm of gnats, his eyes unfocused. "Hey," Dave said seriously. You're okay. You're gonna be okay." Carcat huffed weakly and rolled over, trying to sit up. "Duh," he said. "I know that. Just give me a moment." Dave sat back and watched as Carcat struggled to pull himself together. It was hard to watch, and even harder to sit and do nothing. Dave's heart was pounding. "Help me off the floor," Carcat stuttered, his teeth chattering. "Sure thing," Dave said, reaching out to him. Carcat locked his arm across Dave's shoulder and let himself be tugged up onto the thin mattress above them. The springs groaned with the added weight. The blanket slid off and fell with emotion, revealing Carcat in a pair of loose black sports shorts and nothing else. Dave resolved to keep his eyes only on Carcat's face for the time being, like the good friend he was. Carcat didn't seem to notice his lack of clothes as he shivered in the cold air, radiating a fevered heat that Dave could feel seeping into his side from the contact. Dave didn't move or speak, letting Carcat have the time to recover at his own pace as he offered a silent support. Slowly, the tremors that rocked Carcat subsided. His red eyes still looked dead, but there was at very least a light in them, a speck of awareness completely different from the dull-eyed wolf Dave had seen earlier. "Do you think you can try the stairs?" Dave asked him. Carcat shuddered again, leaning heavily into Dave's side. "You'll have to help me," he said. "Okay," Dave decided. "We'll go slow. Let's get you out of here." Dave pulled Carcat to his feet, the werewolf leaning on him for support, with his arm around Dave's shoulders. Dave had a good grip on Carcat. He wouldn't let his friend fall. They wordlessly tracked a slow path across the floor. The door was still hanging open from Dave's entry, and he left it open behind him as they passed through it. There was no need for locks and armed security now. The worst part of the danger had passed. Dave carefully navigated the stairs, doing most of the work as he climbed upwards. It probably would have been faster if he just carried Carcat himself, but he never offered the indignity of that idea out loud. "Is this how you broke your nose?" Dave asked to fill the awkward silence, recounting that throwaway line from months ago. "Tripping on the stairs?" Carcat took his time with answering, as if he had to dig backwards through his memory to find the answer. "Yeah," he coughed out. "I thought I could do it on my own. Dad freaked the fuck out, got blood everywhere." They reached the top of the staircase. The lights were dim, the windows dark, but the kitchen was warmly lit as Dave deposited Carcat into a chair at the table. Mr. Vanta's instructions had been clear, and Dave was going to follow them. "Now," he said, "food time." Carcat made a face of distaste. In the light, Dave could see how heavy the bags under his eyes were, lines of utter exhaustion inked across every inch of skin as he sagged downwards, like gravity itself was too much for him. He filled a glass with water and handed it over to Carcat, whose lips looked painfully dry. Carcat seized the glass and drained it, ravenous, so Dave refilled it for him and kept adding water to it until Carcat must have drank close to a gallon. Good, maybe that would hydrate him some. Carcat turned to the shiny stovetop and very carefully opened the fridge, ever paranoid about swords and booby traps, even though he knew this wasn't his apartment. The inside of the fridge looked completely normal, filled with more food than Dave had ever seen in his entire life. Cold air leaked out. He might not have been a chef, but he was pretty sure he could manage to cook some eggs without burning down the house. He took out the cardboard carton, its logo stamped organic and free range, and opened it to reveal a neat row of brown eggs. He'd never seen brown eggs before, or any eggs, really, but how hard could this cooking thing be? He picked up an egg. It felt cold and smooth against his palm. Yo, Karkat, he asked, can I borrow your phone? Karkat wordlessly pulled his smartphone from his pocket and handed it over. There wasn't even a passcode to unlock it. The home screen was set to a picture of him and his dad smiling together. Dave opened up Google and typed in how to cook eggs and was immediately swamped with millions of hits. He tried to refine his search. How do you like your eggs? He asked Karkat, who looked like he was attempting to become one with the kitchen table. His head was down, sleep starting to take a hold of him. Dave heard a grunt of response, but no words. You're getting them scrambled, Dave told him, settling on what seemed like the easiest option as he navigated past pictures of complicated omelets and deviled eggs to a site called How to Scramble Eggs for Idiots, and got started. He found a frying pan, some salt, a tube of cooking spray, and combined them all into the pan. He followed the instructions of the website, but they only began at the egg part with no prep beforehand, so Dave hoped the pan and spray were correct. There was at least pictures he could follow. He spent several seconds tapping the egg against the countertop before achieving 0 results, so he just smacked that egg down and splattered egg everywhere as it exploded in his hand. Shit, this was harder than it looked. The broken yolk dripped in runny yellow down his fingers, cold and slimy, and he felt a twinge of disgust at the feeling. He wiped up the ruptured egg and cleaned off his hand again before selecting a new victim. This time he went slowly, tapping the egg gradually harder against the countertop until a thin web of cracks appeared, which he stuck his thumb through to tear the shell in half. Somehow he still ended up with yolk all over himself, but there was at least egg in the pan now. He repeated the process 5 times and turned on the burner. Heat flared to life. What are you doing? Dave nearly jumped at the unexpected sound of Karkat's voice. Prepare to be blown away by my godlike domesticity skills, he replied without turning around. I am making you some goddamn eggs. He heard a huff of tired laughter, then, did you really have to Google how to make eggs? The phone was still open on the counter, the website plain to see. Yeah, so, Dave said. I thought you were asleep. Not yet, Karkat said, but he yawned halfway through his words. Dave turned around to see Karkat was at least sitting upright again. He looked like microwave death, but the light was coming back to his eyes, so Dave counted that as a win. Dave scanned the website, skimming past long paragraphs of what to do next. The entire time, the stove grew hotter. A sizzle filled the air. You've got to mix them first, Karkat yawned again, looking amused. The water must have revived him a little. His shaggy hair was falling to his eyes as he blinked up at Dave. What? Dave said, his ears feeling warm at the way Karkat was gazing at him. You've got to mix them, Karkat said again. Have you ever cooked before? No. Dumbass, Karkat laughed again. They're burning. Dave looked down at the pan and saw that the massive eggs were turning brown around the edges. The smell was terrible. Yep, they are, he agreed, sliding the pan away from the heat and setting it aside. He'll deal with that mess later. Okay, he said. No eggs. That was a bad idea. What else do you want? Karkat looked approximately 3 seconds away from collapsing where he sat. He could barely keep his eyes open. Nothing, he said. I feel sick. I just want to sleep. Your dad told me to make sure you ate something, Dave explained. I'll let you sleep for as long as you want, I promise, but you've got to eat something first. This time, Karkat didn't answer, so Dave went digging in the fridge again. He emerged with some vanilla pudding, half a carrot, and an apple. Bone the apple teeth, Dave said proudly. Dig in. Karkat blinked one eye open to observe the disaster of a meal. No, stubbornness hardened his tired features. If I eat that, I will throw up. You do not want that to happen. Dave felt himself bend under the pressure of the promise of conflict in Karkat's eyes. The last thing he wanted to do was fight, and even further down on that list of shitty things that could happen was attempting to force-feed his friend an apple. Plus, vomit was gross, and he didn't want to deal with that. Okay, Dave gave in. No food. You win this time, Karkat. Karkat swayed in his chair, exhaustion taking over. He might have fallen if Dave hadn't zipped over to catch him. Whoa, Dave said concerned. Easy there, you alright? Karkat nodded wordlessly, still leaning into Dave's side, nearly dead weight. He looked truly terrible after spending the last 60 hours in a state of manic bloodlust, with no sleep or food, and Dave was watching the inevitable collapse of such an exertion. Karkat was simply done in. Dave wasn't completely sure if he was actually awake at this point. It was hard to tell. Karkat? There was a soft grunt of response, and Dave felt his heart melt. He gently readjusted the grip on his friend, squaring his shoulders. Okay, Dave said. Let's get you out of here. He seriously doubted that Karkat could navigate another flight of stairs to make it to his room, so the couch was the clear winner here. It was shockingly easy to carry Karkat into the next room. Like this, it was easy to see why. Karkat's bare chest and stocky frame were etched with the outlines of bones, too thin, no fat, nothing but a hardened wiry musculature beneath the skin that looked so out of place on such a body. A lump started to form in the back of Dave's throat. He could see Karkat's ribs, for God's sake. Dave set him on the couch as gently as he could, but Karkat's red eyes flew open as the plush fabric sank under him. His hand flew up and locked around Dave's wrist like an iron band. Dave felt the unnatural strength behind it and didn't try to jerk away. Instead, he froze. Karkat, it's okay. It's just me. You're okay. Karkat stared at him with fevered eyes. His grip didn't change. Stay, he pleaded. For a second, Dave didn't understand. What? Don't leave me, Karkat asked, terrified of something Dave couldn't name. Please? That please hurt more than any time Bro had struck him with his fist. It sent Dave reeling internally. He didn't have to think about his response. Okay, he promised. I won't. Karkat didn't release him until Dave had sat down at the other end of the sofa. Then he settled back down like a weight had been lifted off of him. Dave dragged the blanket off the back of the couch to cover him with. The fleecy fabric was soft and fluffy in stripes of dark plaid that he tucked around his exhausted friend. Karkat's head was slumped down onto his chest, his expression hidden as his breathing slowed. Dave stayed seated on the couch. He didn't dare move away, nor did he want to as he studied the sleeping Karkat. 1,000 thoughts bustled around inside his head, replaying the desperate quiet pleas and what it meant, terrified of rejection. He looked at his now deceptively peaceful friend, who at last looked both relaxed and like he'd been hit by a truck all at once. Dave leaned back, at a loss for words, as some strong feeling rocked through him, a wave of emotions he didn't dare name. He stayed like that, watching Karkat sleep, sitting upright on a couch in a dark living room. He eventually took off his shades and set them on the floor, careful not to disturb the sleeping werewolf, but at this point, Dave doubted anything short of a bullhorn would wake him. His own exhaustion began to settle into his bones, but he kept his eyes open, watching Karkat breathe as the seconds ticked by. He must have eventually nodded off at some point, because the sound of a key turning on the front door woke him up in a flash. His eyes bolted open at the soft sound, instantly on high alert, even as he realized that something had changed. He was no longer sitting upright on the couch. Instead, he was lying sprawled across Karkat with his head on his friend's chest. He could hear Karkat's slow, steady heartbeat in his ear. Karkat was still fast asleep with his head thrown back over the arm of the couch. Both of his arms were around Dave. Dave struggled to lift himself upright, panicking as he heard the door open. Karkat's arms reflexively tightened around him as Dave's mind surged through a dozen different awful scenarios about who it could be, his fight or flight permanently stuck on the fight with a helpless Karkat under him before Mr. Vantis came into sight around the hall, and Dave forced his fists to relax, his heart pounding with a mixed relief and tense anticipation. The man didn't turn on the light, but Dave knew the darkness didn't hide him well enough for the man not to see the position Dave was in. He stayed still, not daring to move. The quiet, whispered voice startled him. "Everything all right in there?" Mr. Vantis asked, concerned. Dave swallowed thickly. "Yeah," he said, expressionless and emotionless. He refused to feel embarrassed or ashamed, and defiance filled him as Mr. Vantis shuffled closer. But Karkat's dad did nothing except gaze at his son. "Is he okay?" "Yes," Dave answered tersely. "Everything went fine." The man nodded, his expression gentle. "I'll leave you two be then. It's very early. I'll see you in the morning." Dave nodded reflexively, confused as Mr. Vantis left the room and headed upstairs. Dave could feel Karkat breathing beneath him, and knew that he should move away and never speak of this again. But he felt warm and comfortable and safe in Karkat's arms, and damn it, if this was all he ever got, he could die happy. He looked down at Karkat and felt his heart nearly break. This was everything he wanted. Karkat was everything he wanted, and they'd never been so close before, and Dave could trick himself into believing that there was a possibility that maybe Karkat one day would feel the same. But for now, he'd take what he could get and be thankful for it. He laid his head back down on Karkat's chest and went back to sleep. Oh, I love them. I love them. I love them so much. I love them so much. What a lovely chapter. Oh my gosh. Alright. That wasn't too bad for me. Voice-wise, they're so soft. They are so soft. They are so cute. I literally love them so much. I love them so, so much. Alright. Alright, let's hop into the next one. Okay, here we go. Chapter 14. Dave was up and off of Karkat long before his friend woke up in the morning. Dave was caught between the rising sun with its threat of being discovered and the warmth of his friend's embrace. In the end, fear won out, and Dave made sure to be up and showered long before Karkat managed to drag himself back to the land of the living at around 11 in the afternoon. Mr. Vantis didn't say anything to Dave about the secret cuddle fest he'd walked into, but there was a knowing glint in his eyes, and Dave wordlessly slid into place at the small kitchen table. His freshly washed hair was still wet on top, the shorter sides nearly dry. He could hear Karkat fumbling around in the living room, his steps heavy and uncoordinated, as Dave scrolled through the massive backlogs of text from his handler that he'd been purposefully ignoring. If it had been about anything important, Dave was sure Slick would have called him. He sent the Fed a quick text just to fuck with him, in high spirits now that Karkat was back and he knew everything was okay. I lived, bitch. Dave waited a moment or two for the expected reply. He wasn't disappointed. What the fuck is wrong with you? Are you goddamn crazy or something? I have been trying to check up on you for the last 45 hours. The hell, kid? I lived, bitch? The fuck? Dave couldn't help but grin, and he responded, holding back a laugh. Did you like all the memes I sent you? Kid, no. I do not appreciate the 500 photos of some god-awful face saying something about nasty 2 days and slang I don't even think people your age use. It's shit and your sense of humor is disturbing. Please don't send them to me anymore. Oh, but don't you want to know that I'm alive and all that jazz? You know, communicating through niche memes is actually considered a sign of trust in most internet communities. Is that the problem? Is there not enough trust between us for shitty memes? Should I go back to ignoring you completely? Fuck off, Dave. Hey, guess what? Click here to see this image. I'm not opening that, you little shit. I will be there to pick you up in half an hour. Do not keep me fucking waiting, you ungrateful jerkwad. Fine, asshole. I'll keep my memes to myself from now on if you can't truly appreciate their ironic beauty. Just be ready when I get there. Understood. Click here to see this image. Ah! Dave put his phone down, grinning from cheek to cheek. Ribbing the Fed was fun when it was about shitty memes he'd spent 30 seconds in on clip art. Karkat entered the room, yawning, his hair tousled up. He found a shirt somewhere, but was still in those same loose shorts as last night. What are you smiling at? Dave waved his phone in the air. Texting Slick, he explained. He does not appreciate the memes I've been sending him. What memes? Karkat asked curiously, sliding into the seat beside Dave, who tilted the phone screen at him so he could see for himself. Karkat whistled and winced, then grinned at what he saw. Ugh, he said, blinking. I think my eyes are bleeding after seeing that monstrosity. That's the goal, Dave said, still smiling. I sent you some choice ones as well. Karkat slapped his empty pocket and frowned. Shit, he said, I think I left my phone downstairs. I'll have to get it later. Dave remembered all the barely concealed yearning his texts had revealed and felt a quick flash of discomfort. There was no way he could hide those messages from Karkat. He'd have to find some way to explain it away. Maybe. Hopefully. Boys, Mr. Vantis called out, turning around to face them. It's nice to see everyone awake at last. Did I miss anything interesting? Was that a jab at what the man had seen last night? Dave swallowed wordlessly, his face carefully neutral. I don't think so, Karkat answered, his face both thoughtful and dismissive, as if he was lingering over the details while simultaneously trying to move past the subject. He waved his hand. Just more full moon bullshit. Dave, Mr. Vantis asked with one eyebrow raised, how was it for you? Dave painted himself with false innocence. Boring, he said. I watched a lot of YouTube videos and listened to music, mostly. And made memes. Karkat spoke up happily, relieved. Yes, and made memes, Dave agreed, hiding his hours of stress. Slick should be here to pick me up soon. Oh, that's too bad, Mr. Vantis said as Karkat's face fell. I was just about to whip up some pancakes for everyone. As alluring as the idea of fresh homemade pancakes were, Dave's head was too heavy with everything he'd seen, thought of, and experienced over the past 60 hours to let go of his inner anxiety. The thought of eating right now made him feel sick. Actually, Dave said, I'd rather not intrude further. Thank you for having me over and housing me for a few days, but I think it's best if I leave soon. Karkat looked plainly hurt, a deep crease forming between his eyebrows, so Dave quickly said, I'll see you tomorrow. The uncertainty didn't leave Karkat's face, but he agreed. Tomorrow. The next few seconds were filled with awkwardness until Dave's phone vibrated. He scanned the messages with a flick of his eye. I'm outside, and don't leave anything behind because there's no way in hell that I'll drive your ass back over here to pick up whatever you forgot. Fine, I'll be out in a minute. Slick's here, Dave said out loud. He didn't try to hide the melancholy in his voice. I'd better go. Karkat looked on the verge of saying something, but he ended up shrugging. I'll text you later, okay? Okay, Dave nodded, and then drifted out to the living room to pick up his already packed-up backpack. He headed to the door. Karkat was waiting for him there. His dad was nowhere in sight. Alone, Karkat looked more animated and open. Dave, he said, his voice held weight behind it. Sup, Dave said back just to ruin it, unwilling to have this talk right now. That's my name. Karkat rolled his red eyes. I think we need to talk. Oh, shit. How much did he remember? Dave didn't know the answer, but he did know how to deflect. Can we talk about this later? He asked, not playing dumb, shooting his eyes at the kitchen where Mr. Vantis still sat, obviously listening. Karkat lingered, but at last he nodded. Fine, he said. I'll text you. Dave? Yeah. Thank you for everything, Karkat said, and he opened his arms and embraced Dave again. This time, Dave was ready for it as he hooked his arms around Karkat's back. The memory of his heart beat loud in Dave's mind. He liked this, being close, but for the first time it wasn't enough as Dave hugged Karkat back. There's a spider on my neck. Sorry. What the fuck? Sorry about that. I think I got it. This time, Dave was ready for it as he hooked his arms around Karkat's back. The memory of his heart beat loud in Dave's mind. He liked this, being close, but for the first time it wasn't enough as Dave hugged Karkat back with all the words he couldn't make himself say. He hoped his touch would be enough to get the point across. I'm here for you, Dave promised, his voice lowered as he breathed the words across Karkat's shoulders. Always. Karkat just squeezed tighter, and this was getting too intimate for just friends, but neither of them wanted to be the one to let go. Dave cracked first, stepping back. He cleared his throat. I'll see you soon. Karkat nodded, opening the front door. Now get out, he joked, swallowing hard enough that Dave could hear it. I'll see you tomorrow. Dave stepped past him, careful not to brush against Karkat as he moved by. His knees felt weak. He didn't look back. Outside, the sunlight was blinding as it reflected off the paved driveway and the glossy paint of Slick's black car. Dave squinted even through his shades as a bolt of discomfort shot up his optic nerves. Slick's car was idling, the engine purring softly as Dave opened the passenger door. The Fed was immediately growling at Dave in his growly voice. The thick scent of cigar smoke filled the air. Kid, Slick grunted out, you've got to learn to answer your goddamn phone. Dave shrugged as he put on his seatbelt. I'll answer if you call me, he compromised. Texts? Those aren't too important, right? Wrong, Slick said, but there was a grin in his voice as he put the car in drive. Calls might be for emergencies only, but I still wanted to have some sort of contact with you. Dave felt the chafe on his ankle bracelet. You knew exactly where I was, he said, and no news is good news. So, Slick trailed off as the house began to flash by. How'd it go? Dave kept quiet. His mind was still processing everything that happened. What? Slick prodded at him. No screaming, no disgust. It wasn't like that, Dave said with steel in his voice, defending Karkat. Surprisingly, Slick merely nodded. Yeah, he said. I'd bet not. There's not much that kid could do to scare you off, is there? Dave said nothing, but the silence was telling. Slick nodded again, his voice gentle. You've got it bad, huh? Fuck off, Dave said emotionlessly, turning away to stare at the tinted windows. Slick sighed. Watching you two idiots dance around each other is going to give me an anxiety attack before much longer, he grunted out, and silence fell over the car. Dave pondered Slick's words. Did he really have it bad? How was that possible? How had he fallen in love with someone he'd never so much as kissed before? They never even held hands. How could Dave have fallen for Carcat across the careful inches they kept between themselves? He spoke without thinking it through, his voice low. Maybe it won't be for much longer. The tires crunched as they pulled into the loose gravel of the safe house driveway. Slick cut the car off. They sat there in silence for a moment. Dave, don't, Dave interrupted him. His fingers were white against the knee of his jeans. It doesn't matter, does it? I can't tell him the truth about me. I fucking can't, but I can't lie to him either, so I'm stuck in this hellish limbo of maybe, maybe not forever. I was going to say, Slick said sternly, that, and I'm speaking apart from my job as your handler here, because telling him the truth is fucking stupid and dangerous, but, Slick shrugged his shoulders, for all the sins you carry, even the ones I don't know about, there's always a chance he'll feel the same way back. Dave gulped. His throat hurt, but the faint idea of that elusive chance Slick spoke about spurred him on. Slick, Dave began uncertainly, what does love mean to you? Slick's single eye stared out of the car windshield into the scraggly pine trees, strangely distant. Love, he said. Well, love means forgiveness. For yourself, and for the other person. He turned to Dave, his expression serious. You want love. It's the hardest thing there is, but it comes naturally all the same. How do I do it? And Dave hated the weakness in his voice, the admittance that he didn't properly understand the emotion that should have been instinctive. Bro had never loved him, that much was certain. But Dirk? Hell, that'd been so long ago. Dave had been a different person then. Was he still capable of love? Of being loved? Start being honest with yourself first, Slick told him, and everything else will follow. He huffed out an abortive laugh. Shit, he said. Any other handler's division would be staunchly against this kind of tomfoolery with a civilian, but me? Fuck. Me and the rest of the crew will throw a fucking party when the two of you stop finally lying to yourselves. Especially Clubs, that lovable bastard. He's been rooting for you from the start. Really? Dave said, interested despite his embarrassment. His face felt flushed. Yeah, Slick said, and he was staring out the window again. Now get going in the house before something else happens. I don't trust you with anything more substantial than your teenage hormones kicking in at last. Dave barked out aloud, laughed, and then left the car grinning. It was later that night that Dave had received the text he'd been dreading. Dave, are you there? When am I not here? Shut it with your bullshit before it even begins. I just want to talk. About what? You know what. And? Fucking and? Is that the best you can do? Oh my fucking god, Dave. I'm going to scream out loud into the nearest pillow, and it is going to be your fucking fault. You can't expect me to have a serious conversation after you give me such a brilliant opportunity for an innuendo like that. Seriously, man. Not cool. Screaming into pillows? That's more ammo than what small wars fight with. Shut it. Clearly, I am texting you. Clearly, since I am texting you, I have my phone back, and I saw the text you left me. Oh, shit. Oh, shit? Really? Is that the best excuse you can come up with? No, I just don't feel like making some half-assed bullshit excuse when I meant every word I sent you. Distantly, Dave knew he was making a mistake, but he couldn't make it stop happening. I meant it. All of it. It might have been a bored spiel that got out of hand, but at least it's full of real shit. Now to try to salvage what he could. Like, I'm sorry you have to go through this every month. It sucks. And if I could find some way to help you more than sleeping on your couch and making sure you don't spontaneously expire every few hours, I'd do it in a heartbeat. This was about me being a werewolf? Dave took the offered out. The out offered him. Yeah, man, full moons suck for you, and I'd like to help. So you're not disgusted or terrified of me? No? And you're not going to run screaming for the hills next time we see each other because I'm such a ghastly human being that barely qualifies as human? No, why would I even think that? Or why would you even think that? I don't know, you were just in such a hurry to leave. I thought... Never mind. No, what? What is it? Uh, I thought you were going to leave me. Just a little, because I'm a paranoid motherfucker who overthinks everything. I literally said, as I was leaving, that I'd always be there for you. I know, okay? I was just stressed and freaking the fuck out about a lot of shit that doesn't actually matter. Like that god-awful news interview I have to go to this week. Fuck, that's this week? Shit, where'd all the time go? You tell me. It does seem like it jumped up on me extremely fast, and that might have been because I've been dreading it for so long. Are you still gonna go do it? Hell yes. Is it weird that I'm terrified but still enthusiastic about it? Like, there's so much that could go wrong, but at the same time, for a lot of people out there, I will be the only positive representation of lycanthropy they've ever experienced. And that's a lot of pressure. So I've got to get it right. There won't be any second chances. I wish I knew what they were going to ask beforehand so I can prepare, but they want to keep me honest, so I'm clueless. I think that's the worst part, the not knowing. It's on a Friday in Iowa City, so I'll have to miss school again. Isn't Iowa City like 2 hours away? Yeah. I'd invite you to go with me, but something tells me that your handler won't allow that. Dave pictured the scene and suppressed a shudder. Yeah, live TV news, a fuck ton of cameras, and people in a new and crowded place. Slick would flip his shit if I even asked. Which is why I'm totally going to do it. Dave, no, it'll just start a fight between you, and I don't want to cause more strife between the two of you. Aw, but our handler-charge relationship thrives on a sense of mutual antagonism. Well, it shouldn't. I know he tries really hard for you. Maybe you should cut Agent Slick some slack. Nope, can't have that. What if he thinks I'm going soft? I'm losing touch with my gangster ways, stuck in the middle of fuck-offsville, Iowa. Fucking with Slick is the least I can do to hold on to my street cred. I highly doubt you ever had street cred, plus you're too smart to be a mob pusher. And yet, I can see you stagnating here, settling down into something calmer and more in control, so maybe losing touch with your old ways is a good sign, is a good thing. What do you mean? You should have seen yourself when you first got here. You were twitchy, stressed out, anxious mess. Not that you're much different now, but back then I could feel the dark cloud hovering over you. You kept your eyes on the exits and fiddled with your pencils like you were practicing using it as a weapon. You were tired all the time and you never fucking smiled. You walked like you were expecting to get jumped from every angle, and you never sat with your back to the door. I know that you must have been through some really bad shit, and I know that it's left its mark on you. But it's good to know that sometimes time can heal wounds. Or you don't walk like you have that same weight on your back anymore. You smile, you joke, you laugh, and I can see it moving behind your shades sometimes. That hint that maybe things are going to be okay. Just hearing that made his skin crawl, and Dave instinctively looked for the door to his safe house bedroom. He wasn't sure what he thought about that, but Carcat, what if losing my edge isn't a good thing? Why not? It's just that edge, that semi-neurotic behavior you notice, that's what's kept me alive. Losing it might seem well and good to you, but until this manhunt is over, I'd rather keep my edge in my back pocket, just in case. So it is a manhunt, then. You probably should have figured that part out by now. I know, but that's the first time you've said as much out loud. And out of curiosity, what skills do you mean? Aside from being a nervous ball of steely anxiety that you cover with a thin veneer of cool guy chill and indifference. Fucking ouch, no need to at me like that. And you have so many scars. I've wondered about that too, and those are just the ones that I can see. I'm sure the rest of you looks just as cut up. Does that bother you? Dave, it looks like you tried to fight a wood chipper and lost. Of course they bother me. You've been hurt so many times. Yeah, I guess I have, but that doesn't really bother me anymore. But it bothers me. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to be just another scar you add to your collection once Slick yanks you away to some other small nowhere town where things go south with that case and you can't tell me about it. In that instant, Dave wanted to tell him about it. About Bro. He didn't, and the crazy notion passed within a few heartbeats, but the silence he left in chat was telling. You want to tell me, don't you? God damn it. I used to not for a lot of reasons, but the idea is warming up to me. I do think you are able to handle the truth, but but I'm not ready. There it was. The truth was out. Dave wasn't ready to freely admit to his sins quite yet. He wasn't ready to shed the weights of his errors when he still believed he deserved their burden. Somehow, Karkat understood. That's okay, Dave. I'll still be here when you are ready. Dave let out a breath he'd been holding. Thank you. He signed off for the night, watching the fading silver of light that left from the slats and his window blinds as they... He signed off for the night, watching the fading sliver of light that fell from the slats and his window blinds cut themselves like diamonds across his hands. His scars shone silver. From all that he'd heard about love, it was supposed to hurt. He was used to getting hurt. He'd been hurt a lot, so often he'd lost count, and that wasn't just physical pain either. Losing Dirk was a pain he still felt, the wound unhealing. Even his heart was deeply scarred, and if he couldn't escape from pain, he might as well embrace it. Karkat was worth it. But not now. Not when Dave was dealing with his own mountain of shit. First, he had to work through his own issues. Dave let his eyes slip closed, remembering Slick's words about forgiveness, and texted Karkat back one last time. Hey, quick question that's in no way, shape, or form suggestive at all. What does love mean to you? The reply was instant. Love? That's easy. Love is a city we build ourselves. For the next week, Dave stole secret glances at Karkat while they were at school, simply watching him. Now that the weather was cooling off, his ever-present sweaters and long sleeves didn't stand out as much, even if the plush fabric still swallowed him up. Dave could barely keep his eyes off his friend, and even behind the relative safety of his shades, Dave was sure Karkat had noticed. Ever since Dave had begun to entertain the impossible ideas that he might actually be in love with his best friend, he'd catch Karkat watching him too. The subtle gleam of his eyes meeting Dave's from the next desk over or from across the bus aisle made an unnameable feeling bolt through Dave's chest and flutter down to his toes, warming him on the inside like he'd swallowed a flame. It was like a game, a secret they both held together, neither one wanting to break first. It led to a lot of awkward dancing around that Dave secretly loved. It was like they were two satellites in orbit, coming closer with every pass, knowing how spectacular the inevitable collision would be. Dave sat in his chosen seat in the front office as Officer Johnson and Karkat joked about some lame video currently circulating around the internet. Karkat's laugh came from deep in his chest, something merry and mirthful that had his shoulders shaking. What is it? Dave asked curiously. Karkat tilted the phone at him, revealing a somewhat dumb-looking cat with an inexplicably long tongue failing to drink out of a dripping sink. It was kind of hilarious. Dear God, Dave said, exaggerating his swoon as he slumped over in his chair. I can't. It's too fucking cute. On screen, the fluffy white cat continued to miss the water every time. Karkat was smiling. The sunlight shone in through the window in Principal Warren's office and illuminated the dust on the floor. Dave felt warm and happy. There, in that office, his sins seemed very far away. Then Officer Johnson had to go and ruin it. So, the policeman drawled, what about that interview I hear your dad talking about, Karkat? Any plans or concerns for it? Karkat instantly scowled, the happy expression falling away. Only the usual, he said. You know, the constant threat of death aside, it might actually be fun. The sarcasm in his voice was scathing. Then why do it? Johnson asked, concerned. Karkat shrugged. Someone has to, he said, and I'm not going to let fear control me. If the country has its doubts about me, they can say them to my face. The stubborn bravery impressed Dave. He couldn't imagine facing his own fears head-on like this. He said as much out loud. I think it's brave, he admitted. I could never do something like that. Why not? Johnson asked, because he didn't know any better. Dave said nothing, but Karkat understood all the same. Still, Karkat seemed moved by Dave's silence. Dave, he asked, did you ever talk to Slick about going to the interview with me? Dave shook his head. Not yet, he said. I'm putting it off as long as physically possible. Why? Procrastination is my superpower. Excuse me. Carcat rolled his eyes, complaining. Dave. Dave shrugged. He's going to say no, he said. We both know this is a fact, so why put it off? Because he might say yes, Carcat said hopefully. Dave pulled out his flip phone and texted Slick. Yo, my main agent guy. Quick question. Carcat's got this big TV interview thing next Friday, and that I'm sure you know everything about up in Iowa City, wherever the fuck that is. So without preamble, can I go? The answer came a minute later. A fucking live TV interview, and you want your ass to be there. No, but Carcat wants me to go. Moral support and all that shit. I thought you would have known better than to even ask. This is stupid, Dave. Plain stupid. No, you can't go. That should be fucking obvious. You two fucking kids are going to give me dual heart attacks one of these days. Yeah. I know. I just had to ask. Dave tilted the phone screen at Carcat. Verdict's in, he said, sighing. I'm under mandatory house arrest. Carcat scanned the words and frowned. Damn, he said. Worth a shot at least. Maybe, Dave admitted, but I'm not the biggest fan of cameras or crowds, people, so obvious dangers aside, it really isn't my style anyway. He gave Carcat the smallest of grins. I'll have to be with you there in spirit. When you feel the ghost of the world's ultimate cool guy shiver across your visions like yesterday's bad gas station sushi, making everything technicolor and generally more awesome than it was before. Just know that I'm there with you. Sounds like a stomach flu, Carcat joked. Or being high, Johnson added, squinting suspiciously at Dave. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Dave couldn't help the laugh that burst from him at the thought of drugs and him having contact with each other. Nope, he said, still laughing. No drugs for me. I eat my school and get 12 hours vegetables a night. Carcat was still grinning. So was Dave. The idea of him with drugs was laughable. Bro was many things, but above all, that psycho had valued a clear head, and Dave was okay with throwing most everything Bro had taught him into a burning garbage fire. The no drugs one seemed like pretty common sense. Johnson looked skeptical, but then all cops were trained to be skeptical about people's supposed drug innocence. Bro had also taught him to never trust a cop, that law enforcement were all evil minions of the deep state, and while Dave didn't generally trust most institutions of power, Johnson seemed okay to him. The bell rang then, and Dave had to trudge back to class. The semester was wrapping up, and the teacher's panic about tests and finals didn't touch him. He spent the rest of the day planning out rap lyrics of a song he'd never let anyone else see. History class was one of the few classes Dave would intermittently pay attention in. Sometimes he'd pick up stray tidbits of information that he was sure would remain stuck in his mind for the rest of time. Today, the teacher was droning on about old cities and Romans who Dave had never really given a shit about. Lots of old world cultures that thought throwing outcasts or political opponents to lions was fun. The Romans weren't special. But this talk wasn't about the culture. It was about the great city they'd built between 7 hills and the 2 men who had founded it. Dave had heard the myth before. Romulus and Remus, I think is how you say this. The Wolf Twins, some of history's only werewolves cast in a good light, and how they'd inspired their followers to band together and founded a city that would last the ages. Believed to be demigods for their feats of speed and strength, the brothers had managed to turn their curse into their greatest strength. This was, of course, back when wild wolves still roamed freely, and people could catch the disease through contact with them. In the legends, Romulus and Remus had been suckled by a she-wolf, and Dave reckoned that would be plenty of chance to contact to spread lycanthropy. In a way, the legend made Dave feel sad. History was rich with negative portrayals of werewolves, from witch burnings to Middle Eastern wolf hunters who patrolled the countryside looking for werewolves. The legacy of Rome was the one reminder that not all werewolves were seen as monsters and hated for their monstrous ways. In ancient Rome, its 2 werewolf founders were seen as chosen by the gods and used their unnatural speed, strength, and healing to aid them in battle. But they were also great philosophers, politicians, and leaders of men. Their strength wasn't just in their wolf. Dave looked at Carcat, his enraptured face fixed on the teacher as she lectured about the historic wolves. and he thought about the upcoming interview and what it must mean to Karkat. He thought about the life Karkat had built here with his father, about Karkat's words on the meaning of love, and how it was like building a city. He thought about Rome and its grandeur and its inevitable fall. Dave watched the light shine in Karkat's beautiful eyes and wondered how long he could play this game before everything came crashing down. Whoa! Woohoo! Oh my goodness, I think I'm gonna end there for today. I think today we're doing a little shorter today. Just 2 chapters today. I think not tomorrow, because tomorrow's Saturday. We'll be back on Monday to keep going. But we are now officially halfway through, or more than halfway through, ish. We're more than halfway through now. But yeah, that's where I think I will end today. We will end on that note. Kind of the little sequence that references what the title is about. It's the fall of Rome, baby. It's the Rome. So yeah. Thank you all for joining me today. To read some fanfiction. And yes, chapter end. We'll be back Monday to do more. So that'll be it. I might stream this weekend. Who knows? If I do, it'll be animation stuff, right? It won't be reading stuff. I'm still working on the Dave animation on and off while doing a few other things. But yeah. So thank you all for joining me again this very, very lovely evening. And I'm gonna head out. Yeah. Have a lovely rest of your night/evening. Bye-bye. Also, thank you to the people who did follow while I was reading. I did see you guys. And yeah, have a lovely night. Bye-bye.